This past weekend, Maesuma Top 12 went down in Japan, and it turned out to be one of the biggest Japanese majors of all time. However, what made this tournament special was the amount of players from overseas who invaded Japan this weekend to make their claim to win in Japan. While we usually see Japanese players go overseas to compete in the States, this weekend we saw the reverse. The overseas players included Riddles, Dabuz, Mutace, Cosmos, Mr. R, Fatality, Lima, Send, Jazo, Jdizzle, H4, Hbox, and more. So how did all these players do against the legends of Japan like Akola, Mia, and Yoshidora? Let's find out by going over the top 8 of Maesuma 12. Our 7th place finishers for this massive tournament were Hero and Yoshidora. That's right, Yoshidora got 7th, a result most people would consider to be an underperforming result. However, guess what? Yoshidora actually outplaced their seed, having been seeded 9th. It seems insane to me, and probably you, that that's just how it was seeded. Since we're talking about Yoshidora anyway, let's start with their bracket run first. Yoshidora started off the weekend well, making it out of the first wave of pools, only being taken to a decisive Game 3 once against Manzoku. However, once making it into top 96, Yoshidora suffered an upset loss against Japan's premier Daisy main, Umeki. The set went to a decisive Game 3, but Umeki, the 24th seed, was able to pull out the victory against Yoshidora, the 9th. After having suffered this loss, Yoshidora went down to losers where they had another close call, winning a Game 3 set against Kananabe, who we discussed on this video on the last Maesuma Top 12, as Kananabe actually finished 7th in that tournament. This allowed Yoshidora to make it into top 32. Unlike wave number 4, which we talked about last weekend and had best of 3 sets all the way until winners finals, Maesuma Top 12 started doing best of 5 in top 32. But Yoshidora had a long way to go to make it into top 8. They started their losers run in top 32 by beating Omuwatsu 3-1, who we just talked about in the Wave 4 video as well, before going on to 3-0 Abadango and Oi George. However, Yoshidora had to win one more set to make it into top 8, which would prove to be the most challenging set by far. Yoshidora had to go up against Shuton, the winner of Wave 4 and one of the best in Japan. This set was a hard-fought set, going all the way to a Game 5, but in the end, Yoshidora was able to pull off the upset, winning over Shuton, the 6th seed of the tournament, eliminating him at 9th. Yoshidora unfortunately went on to lose their first match of top 8, losing a Game 5 set to Mia. Yoshidora's run this weekend was an extremely impressive losers run, losing all the way back in the first set of top 96, all the way to making top 8. Now for our second 7th place finisher, Hero. He's a lesser known name overseas, but not completely unknown by any means. Hero is a Bowser main and has cemented themselves as the best Bowser in the world over this past weekend. Hero was the 18th seed for the event, so their 7th place finish left a few upsets in their wake. Hero started the weekend well, getting through pools flawlessly to make it into top 96. Hero then went up against Cosmos, one of the invading Americans at Maesuma, who also attended Wave 4. Hero would defeat Cosmos in a decisive 2-1 set, moving on to top 32 and sending Cosmos down to losers, where he would lose to Omuwatsu for a placement of 33rd. Hero went on to lose his first set of top 32, losing in a 3-1 to Mia. Seems like Mia is taking down a lot of our top 8 so far. But Hero wasn't done yet. He went on a tear through the losers bracket, 3-0ing all of his next opponents, including Ryo, one of the best and only Diddy Kong mains in Japan, Jogibu, one of the Captain Falcon mains that got top 8 at Maesuma Top 12, and TG, a banjo player who went on their own insane run this weekend with one of the best SPRs of the tourney, getting 9th as the 57th seed. Notably, TG also defeated Mutace, another invading overseas player, in a 2-0 set, sending him to losers early where he lost against Jakabata, a Mega Man main, for an overall placement of 65th, not even making top 32. Hero had swept through losers to make top 8, but came up against a massive wall in the first set of top 8, going up against Riddles. Even though Hero lost this set in a 3-0 loss, it was one of the closest 3-0s ever, with Hero putting up an amazing performance against the invading Canadian Kazuya. Now we get to our 5th place finish for Maesuma Top 11, Neo and T. Both of these players actually outplaced their seed with this 5th place finish, but not by the same amount, with T getting 5th as the 7th seed, and Neo getting 5th as the 21st. Let's talk about Neo and how he outplaced his seed by so much first. Neo started off the weekend exceptionally well, not only making it out of pools, but making it into top 32, only dropping one game in his top 96 set against Ordomigi. Neo has been on a massive come-up lately, gaining many overseas fans through his unique character, his social media interactions, and his kinship with fellow Corrin main Shattuck. But Neo now had to make it through top 32, and he was put against two exceptionally skilled opponents. First, Neo had to defeat Aim, the best Sheik in Japan and perhaps the world. The set was extraordinarily close, going to a tight Game 5, but Neo pulled it out over Aim in the end. But now, if Neo had fought hard to win that set, his next one would be doubly so. Neo went up against Ken. This set went to Game 5, and the two players spent the entirety of those 5 games going back and forth. Neo eventually pulled out the win over Ken, making an impressive upset and making it into top 8. Neo swept through his pools and top 96, and for top 32 pulled off 2 very impressive set wins back to back. However, Neo was now in winners semifinals and now had to face Akola, and Neo fought hard against the player considered the best in Japan, but Akola was simply a different beast. Neo dropped down to losers and lost his next set to Mia in a 3-0 loss. Tragic for sure, but Neo lost to Akola and Mia, 2 of the best players in Japan. There is absolutely nothing to be disappointed in with losses like those. Now for our 5th place finisher, T. T has been somewhat muted in Japan recently, with his best wins not taking place on his home soil, but instead taking place in Europe. It's a running joke that T is the best player in Europe for a reason, but T came out in full force today for Maesuma and outplaced his seed in the process. T started off the weekend much like our other top 8 finishers so far, sweeping through pools, only being taken to a decisive Game 3 once against Keiru. Once in top 96 though, T was taken to a decisive game a second time, this time against Send, another American invader. T would take this set 2-1, sending Send to losers. Send, unlike his American counterparts Mutes and Cosmos, still pulled out an impressive placement despite this early loss, making a short losers run and even eliminating Lima, an American friendly fire incident, before being eliminated by his neighbor to the north, Riddles, for an impressive placement of 13th as the 39th seed. Send is the first overseas invader that I've covered to not only outplace their seed, but make top 32 at all. He won't be the last, however. Going back to T, T went on to defeat Repo in a very close Game 5 set, moving on to winners quarterfinals. T, in winners quarterfinals, went up against Mia. Now, you'd be completely reasonable to think Mia sweeped T here, with Mia having grown into one of the best players in Japan, but that's where you'd be wrong. Quite wrong, actually, as T not only won this set, but won it in a 3-0, a set that was criminally not put on VGBC. This meant that T moved on to winner semifinals, where he went up against a name you might not have been expecting to hear, Gackt. The set was close, like many of the sets we've talked about so far, going to Game 5. But in that Game 5, T got knocked down into losers, having lost the set against Gackt in a Game 5, and had to face Riddles in the Kazuya Mishima Ditto in losers quarterfinals. And can you guess what game it went to? That's right, Game 5. But let me tell you, Kazuya Dittos are awesome. Although T lost to Riddles, being eliminated at 5th, T's losses were incredibly close, and T had some great wins along the way. Now it is time for our 4th place finisher, someone we were just talking about, Riddles. Riddles was the highest placing overseas invader at Maesuma Top 12 this past weekend, and had a fantastic run with Kazuya Mishima and Terry Bogard. Riddles made it into top 32 flawlessly, sweeping his pool and defeating Ryo to make it out of pools. In top 96, Riddles 2-0'd Atelier to make it into top 32, a set that was notably streamed and put on VGBC. It was a chance for Riddles to put his skills on display, and it was a chance that he wouldn't waste. Now in top 32, Riddles suffered an extremely early loss when he lost 3-1 to Gackt, who we were just talking about. Riddles went Terry in this set, but Gackt was a different beast this weekend, and when the Gackt train started up, there was no stopping it. Riddles went down to losers, now faced with a daunting run to make it to top 8. First, he had to defeat Kameme. The set went down to a decisive Game 5, and threatened to end Riddles' run early. But Riddles was able to clutch it out, defeating Kameme, knocking him out at 7th place. From this point onward, Riddles went on a hard-fought slog to his eventual 4th place finish. It was tough set after tough set against exceptional opponents. First, Riddles defeated Send 3-0 in a North American friendly fire incident, knocking Send out at 13th. Riddles then had an incredibly close set against Ken, which went to Game 5. Riddles eventually took it out, knocking out Ken at 9th. He then went up against Hero, defeating him 3-0, but all intense close games, a set that we talked about much more in Hero's segment. And lastly, Riddles defeated T in the Kazuya Ditto in Game 5, which we've talked about and covered in T's segment. Riddles would go up in losers semifinals against the Game & Watch sensation himself, Mia. The two threw down, but unfortunately, it was not meant to be for Riddles. Mia defeated Riddles 3-1, eliminating Riddles at 4th. Riddles was the best placing NA invader at Maesuma Top 12, which I'm sure will give him pride in the coming days. But before we get to our top 3 finishers, I want to brush up on some other NA invaders and how they did at Maesuma Top 12. We've already covered Cosmos finishing 33rd, Mutace finishing 65th, and Send finishing 13th, with Riddles finishing 4th. But I mentioned a lot more names at the opening of this video. So how did they do? Let's have a brief rundown on the NA invaders at Maesuma Top 12, how they did, notable wins, and who they lost to. Let's start the funeral call. Hungrybox finished 49th, losing to Karage 2-0 and Jogibo 2-1. Being double eliminated by Captain Falcon. And yes, this does mean that Hungrybox outplaced Mutace at a major. What a wonderful world. DeBuzz finished 33rd, much like Cosmos, losing to Doramigi and Sigma, who placed Toon Link. Mr. R also had a 33rd place finish, which outplaced his seed. He lost to Dio the Snake and Atelier, who we discussed a bit earlier. Fatality got 257th as the 47th seed, going 1-2 at a major, losing to Rimiru and Hamachi. Lima got 17th, the 3rd NA invader I've mentioned so far to make it to top 32, joining Send and Riddles, and also the last one to do so. Lima outplaced their seed, got an impressive win over Motsunabe, who I talked about in my Wave 4 video briefly, and lost to Send and Shuton. Jazo got 49th, losing to Sigma and Yara, but getting a good win over Futari no Kiyomi A in the process. J Dizzle got 129th as the 77th seed, losing to Nimba and Rocky. And lastly, H4 got 97th, outplacing his 102nd seed, losing to Dio the Snake and UFO. Now, that wasn't a comprehensive list, but it was all the overseas invaders that I brought up in the intro for the video, so that's all the ones we'll go over for now. Now let's get into our 3rd place finisher. Our 3rd place finisher for Maesuma Top 12 was Gackt. After a dry spell of subpar tournament performances, Gackt pulled out all the stops this weekend, and it seemed as though no one could stop him. Gackt started off by sweeping his pool and 2-0ing Karage, who we just mentioned. in top 96 to make top 32. In top 32, Gackt got what is perhaps the most impressive streak of wins at a Japanese major, defeating Riddles 3-1, Shuton 3-2, and T 3-2, all of which we talked about in their respective segments. After those two close sets with Shuton and T back-to-back, Gackt went up to winners finals against Akola, the Steve man himself. Gackt had come a long way, and he was itching for a chance to go even further. Unfortunately, Gackt lost the set 3-0, Akola handedly defeating him and sending him down to losers finals. In losers finals, Gackt went up against the slayer of the losers bracket, Mia. Both of these players had come a long way, and both desired a shot at the title, but only one of them could have it. Gackt lost to Mia 3-1, eliminating him at third. But Gackt's performance was spectacular this weekend, and also brought us an amazing pop-off during his win against Shuton. And now we get into our top two finishers, Akola and Mia. Akola got to grands through winner's side, and had a very standard bracket as far as majors go. Akola started off this weekend getting through pools and only being taken to a decisive game once against Nizamamo. In top 96, Akola had to fight Paiseriman, who he quickly defeated 2-0. Most of the people we've talked about in this top 8 had to fight their way through so many Game 5 sets and decisive games, but not Akola. Through the start of top 32 all the way to winners finals, Akola was never taken to a decisive game once. He defeated Now 3-1, TG 3-0, Neo 3-1, and Gackt 3-0. For Akola, top 32 and top 8 itself was a sweep. He was in peak form. Mia, on the other hand, had a much harder time making it into grands. Mia won 11 sets this weekend, the most of anyone in the top 8. Mia also swept through pools and top 96, but unlike Akola, Mia didn't drop a single game along the way. Mia defeated Hero to start top 32, but then lost in an upset loss against T 3-0, which we talked about in his segment. Mia stopped by in losers to defeat Rarukun 3-0 before he made it into top 8. For his first set of top 8, Mia had an extremely close call and was almost eliminated by Yoshidora. However, Mia was able to clutch out the set. From that point onward, much like Akola, Mia would not be taken to a decisive game until grands. Mia defeated Neo 3-0, Riddles 3-1, and Gackt 3-0. Slaying the inhabitants of the losers bracket like it was his job. And then it was time for grand finals. Both players have been playing exceptionally well. Both players had only been taken to a decisive game a few times. Both players had swept through the rest of top 8. They were far and away the pinnacle of the tournament. But there could only be one. Akola ended up continuing his massive sweep and defeated Mia 3-0 in Grands, winning Maesuma top 12. Even though the game count was not close, Akola popped off in this victory, and with good reason. He and Mia have been going back and forth at majors recently, taking tournaments off of each other. But today, here and now, Akola came out on top, simultaneously defending and defeating Japan. That's going to be it for today's video. Tomorrow, the day after this comes out, Kagaribi 10 will be taking place over the weekend. All of the NA invaders will be there for that too, and I'll be here to cover it. My video on Kagaribi 10 will come out on Tuesday, while next Thursday's video is up in the air. What should I cover? The seeding and entrance of Battle of BC5? Honeypot 5, a Midwestern regional? Let me know in the comments. Also, please follow my Twitch while you're here. I would really appreciate it. I've been Mr. Mice, and thank you all so much for watching.